Solutions come from different sources, but that doesn't make them a hit. It takes more to improve the old and find the new. Experience, expertise, and collaboration. Because the thinkers of today define the possibilities of tomorrow. Because solutions come out of collaboration. Because it all starts from a conversation. Let's join hands and solve smartly.
Over to you, Amit. Thank you all.
Happy Thursday to all of you, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the audience joining from different parts of the world. Very happy to welcome all of you. Well, my name is Amit Shrivastava, and I'll be your host for today. It is a pleasure to have you all join us today to discuss the topic of building a digital backbone for business transformation. Very important topic, very apt subject, and all of us are grappling now. Well, something about Bosch conversation. Well, it is a exclusive invite-only series for the best of industry leaders to collaborate and share their uh, knowledge to reimagine how we do business for today and tomorrow. Please note that this session is being recorded and you will receive a copy of the recording later in the email. Very important point, audience. There's a text box in which you can enter your questions any point of time during the session or in the panel discussion. Whenever you have question, please put in your thoughts, and I would really like to take them towards the end of the session. Uh, well, a little bit about our session today. The our conversation centers around the challenges being grappled by enterprises around the world, and especially here in the US, which is building a future-proof digital backbone for business transformation. So why this topic? Well, the topic was chosen to throw some light on the significant challenges that enterprises are currently facing as they set out on their business transformation journey. To develop business for the future, the enterprise processes and technology landscape will have to be future proofed. Throughout this Bosch conversation, we will explore the technological challenges enterprises are facing and how they are future readying themselves. Well, for today's session, I am pleased to welcome esteemed global experts from AWS, SAP, JDC Group, and Bosch. Let me introduce the experts from AWS. Eric Yuan, he is the head of global GTM strategy for SAP Industries. Welcome, Eric, to the Bosch conversation.
Thank you, Amit.
I have got Mark Leo. He's from SAP and he's a vice president and industry executive advisory for discrete manufacturing, energy, and natural resources. Welcome, Mark. SAP is doing phenomenal job in this, and I'm sure our audience are going to get a lot of insights from you. Um, from JDC Group, I have got Michael Limashov. He is global head for cloud transformation and innovation services. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Amit.
And from Bosch, I have got Venkatesh. He's a senior consulting partner from Enterprise Digital Transformation Practice. Well, without any delay, let me get to my first session. Well, SAP is a well-known product, and I would like to invite Mark to share his insights on how SAP is providing digital backbone for the industrial manufacturing customers. Welcome, Mark. Go ahead, Mark. Yes.
Got to take mute off, sorry. In my time, I just want to really quickly go through how do we define industrial manufacturing, because people tend to define it a bit differently. Then what are we seeing our customers telling us about what they're facing in the market, the challenges that are hitting them, and then how is SAP developing software specific to solve these business challenges? So next slide, please. As far as defining industrial manufacturing, SAP's been at this for 50 years. We've got a large global customer base in this industry, Bosch being one of our customers. Customers are large, or they can be mid-size enterprises as well, but they go from anything from make-to-stock manufacturing all the way up to very complicated, very highly configurable and complex equipment. So there's a pretty broad spectrum of different, what we'll call industry subsegments that we cater to and that our solutions are designed to support. Next slide, please.
I think there is a lag.
Okay, yes, just hit. So across that spectrum, when we talk to our customers and we go in and they're asking us to help them solve their problems, it's usually the business that is driving the change, and it's IT responding to what the business is asking for. And what the business is asking for tends to be driven to what's going on in the marketplace. If you were to summarize what we typically hear, it falls into sort of three different buckets. I'm not going to read all these bullets, but at the end of the day, on the far left side, there's a bunch of market drivers and global pressures that companies are facing that's really putting the force on IT or the business to be more agile. And in the middle part, a lot of supply chain and regulatory and even cybersecurity threats or reshoring manufacturing that are really forcing companies to become more resilient. And then lastly, there's a lot of growing regulations, whether it's sustainability or even down to data regulations by country. There's a lot of things that are driving needs for sustainability. And so if you take those kind of global market pressures and put it down on the business has to react to this. Next slide, please. And so what that turns into is different strategies that the business have that start to put pressure on IT. And it tends to differ by those different sectors I talked about earlier, but also within sectors. You could have the same companies within a certain row that I was talking about, say industrial automation, and have different priorities on these sort of responses to those market pressures. Anything from cost reductions to sustainability to, hey, we now want to do kind of as a service consumption models on our equipment rather than just sell the equipment. So there's a lot of things going on, and that ripples down and starts to put pressures on IT and the landscape that they have to support this kind of fluidity to the business. Next slide, please. The other thing that we're seeing is not only do you have that going on, but there's this pressure to try to come up with new business models to grow revenue. I mean, a lot of these markets, they're pretty fixed markets. So you've got to get creative in how are we growing the business? And you're starting to see other industries leak into industrial manufacturing. Think of how many pieces of very complex equipment now have sort of an IT flavor to them, right? They've got sensors on them, they're collecting data, they've got software involved with them. Again, if you start to move to different sorts of business models around as a service for your equipment, now you're getting into rentals and you're getting into subscription billing. So this mixture of different industries and different business models from industries is something that we're seeing picking up. And it's really adding to the pressure on that need for this future digital architecture to handle this sort of thing. Next slide. And so the last piece of pressure is, again, back to this digital framework. There is so much data laying around, so many different systems laying around, and such a need to get a grip from the shop floor to the top floor of a business, and not only within the business, but across the supplier and customer base, the different networks that you're dealing with. There's really this pressure to connect everything, right? To be able to be agile and resilient, there has to be this sort of integration or loose connectivity to be able to use the data up and down the stack in an efficient fashion, rather than wasting time trying to chase it in all these different silos. Next slide. So you got these pressures adding up, and what it really starts to move to is it starts to drive the need for upgrading of systems in the backbone. So next slide. So what SAP's done, and we've done this from the very beginning, 50 years ago, is we've really developed our software from feedback from the customer base, what we're hearing directly from them. So It's either through industry advisory councils, coming back through implementations and partners, industry specific user groups. There's a lot of different ways we collect this, but we wind this industry expertise and develop it into the product. And we do it the same way across these 25 different industries. So you end up with, you know, a core set of solutions that are common across everyone, but then there's a layer that is very specific to industries. And now with what I was talking about earlier, that need to be able to sort of pick and choose business processes or capabilities from other industries as they start to change my business models or do things different to try to compete, starts to become very important to have access to this sort of 50 years of baked capabilities within the product suite. Next slide. And so SAP, back to that shop floor to top floor, we're going to talk about this. Bosch is going to go into great detail on this, but we've really crafted the solutions to really fit this industrial manufacturing industry and really support that need to go from shop floor up the top floor and across the networks. Next slide. Couple things on this slide that's important that we'll get into in our discussion and we'll refer to it later is, you know, not only do we have the core ERP, and I talked about the industry specificity that sits there, but there's also a best of suite and there's AI being infused across this platform. But we recognize that not everyone is all SAP. There are a lot of other applications in the landscape when we go from that shop floor to top floor and we try to go horizontal. And that's where this business technology platform comes into play. It allows us to, as people migrate to cloud, keep that clean core, but tie into these other systems that are needed and move data back and forth. And based in the product, there's also pre-configured solutions specific for end-to-end scenarios that we often see across industrial manufacturing so that people can deploy this in sort of phases and digest it at their own pace. Last slide. The other last thing is this is all designed really to support the typical organizational structure of an industrial manufacturer, in that you often see that there's headquarters, but they might have a lot of autonomous divisions or independent plants, and each is a bit different, right? And so there's different flavors of how they might want to apply these business solutions, whether it's, you know, corporate doing shared services and each plant doing their own thing, or one cohesive system for everyone. We really don't care. The system doesn't care. It gives you the flexibility to deploy it the way your business needs it. So with that, I'll wrap up. I'll turn it back over to you, Amit, and I look forward to the conversations later on.
Omar, thank you very much. Really, I picked up certain points. SAP is supporting more than 25 industries, and you talked about the agility and the resilience and the sustainability aspect. Everyone in the customer, all our customers are talking about it, right? Specifically because of this whole geopolitical situation and business expanding beyond geographies, right? You also brought a very important point of the shop floor to top floor and the amount of data being generated and how do you use the data. And that dovetails to my next presenter, Eric. Eric, AWS has been on the forefront of cloud and has been leading it, right? And we would like to hear how the cloud is building a digital backbone for the business transformation. So, Eric, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Amit. I think Mark did a great job level setting. You know, what's the opportunity statement for manufacturers today? If you can go to the next slide. For you, the manufacturers that are running SAP and looking at transforming themselves through data, there's a lot of talk around, you know, advanced services like generative and predictive AI. And the reality is there's no magic dust there. It's all rooted in data, right? And so as you know, it's very critical if you think about your digital transformation strategy, being really able to understand how do we support SAP workloads in the broadest, more scalable format. And what we've done here at AWS, we've been partnered with SAP since the outset, right? I'm going to date myself, but probably since the 4.6C sort of, and that takes us back probably beyond 15 years for you SAP practitioners. But the key message to take away here is AWS is the only cloud hyperscaler that has full support of BTP services. So if you really want to understand what are the capabilities, I encourage you to work backward from your business requirements and understand what services that you really want to take advantage of from SAP. It could be a subset of the 81 coming from SAP. Within AWS, we have over 200 services. Everybody's now talking about composable ERP, composable enterprise application framework, and being able to reimagine business processes, right? And so this concept of a composable mesh of services really jumps to the forefront. And so what you really need to look at is availability and security, right? And so we've got the broadest availability of B2B services. We've got 100% support of Signavio services running on AWS. So if you're interested in looking at your current state and desired state and have an effort around business process mining, just also understand Signavio also runs in AWS, because what will be important is this concept of one single data model at an enterprise level. And so as Mark has talked about it, it's a big world out there. While SAP is very strategic from a transactional environment and supporting business requirements from a workflow and transactional perspective, there are definitely adjacent systems that are complementary to that overall landscape that have to be factored in. Okay, so next slide, please. And so where I'm going to go next is just also recognizing that AWS is also consistently the #1 cloud hyperscaler in terms of just the availability and the ability to deliver cloud hyperscaler services reliably. We also have the largest SAP installed base, right, across our customer community. Next slide. In terms of just our business and strategy in and around SAP, there's a lot changing, right? I talked a little bit earlier about just advanced services, and the talk du jour today is all around generative AI. But the reality is, it's all about the data, as they say, right? It's all about the data, and so I think as you're thinking about how to deploy advanced services, we really need to take a step back and look at IT and OT data federation. How do you connect and collect and contextualize those business data sets at scale, right? And so it's not just within that cell, that line, that plant, or even that operating group or BU. It's across the enterprise. So it's incredibly important to really look at this from a macro strategy perspective. But one thing that we're trying to do, move to the next slide, please, is simplify this, right? So this is an important concept in terms of how we're building. So we like to call this our mental model. And it's really from the edge to business. And so what we're doing at AWS was we're partnering strategically with SAP to reimagine priority use cases for supply chain, for manufacturing, for customer experience. But the common denominator across all of these use cases, SAP is coming from the world of workflows, AWS is coming from the world of service-driven workloads, is we're bringing those things together. We're deploying cloud services to the edge as far out as possible. So if it's on the shop floor, it's a rotating piece of equipment, we see cavitation on a pump or a compressor that's vibrating, that's going to trigger an anomaly, which we like to call an event, right? That will be a signal that will ultimately be passed through a BTP intelligence gateway that ultimately we have the ability to deploy advanced services for anomaly detection. And then ultimately that will go back into an SAP ERP environment to trigger, let's say, a workflow and plant maintenance for inspection or repair, or an MRO event to procure spare parts if it's not in inventory. So you can start to, and I just use that as a use case so that it just illustrates really the end-to-end journey of how we need to reimagine how we're thinking. Just dropping data into a data lake is not good enough. That data has an end state journey in SAP. And so we're designing with that in mind purposefully. Next slide. So as we talk about these use cases, I just also want to highlight, AWS was recently recognized with the most advanced services capabilities around the IoT space, right? In partnership not only with SAP, but with other market leaders like Siemens. All of this really starts to converge together. So as we look at, how do we secure OT data sets at scale, there's a tremendous opportunity there to really directly influence and shape your enterprise strategy from an SAP perspective. And so much so that, we are working with customers routinely to really look at how do we unlock that. If you walk through any plant today, probably about the rough order 30% of the mission critical assets are even instrumented. What we're trying to do now is to really unlock that at scale. Next slide. And then I'm going to leave you everybody with this. These are two really interesting use cases that really demonstrate what is the art of the possible. The first use case on the left is improved asset performance with Amazon Monitron. This is the use case I just referenced earlier in terms of, you have a multi-stage compressor, there's vibration, there's a temperature surge, right? You can pick that up through instrumentation. We actually have a smart devices called Monitron. You can buy a 5-pack today under $1,000 at Amazon Prime today. Go check it out. But what that will do is, within hours, you will be able to deploy intelligence services on that machine. And so what that has done is really democratize the whole world of instrumentation. And so it gives the manufacturer a new way to really reimagine the RCM and reliability programs. And how do they really want to reimagine that whole sort of business process? On the right, this is another extremely interesting use case. For those of you that are in manufacturing, what's the first thing you do when you walk into an industrial facility? You've got to sign in, and you got to make sure you bring in the right PPE, right? Got to make sure you got a hard hat, eye protection, hearing protection, right? Steel toes, what have you. So what we've done is have been able to deploy computer vision, right, into an existing closed circuit TV networks to really capture intelligent images, right? So we're able to scan images and really look at exceptions and anomalies. Maybe this individual didn't bring a hard hat, they didn't have hearing protection or eye protection. So, and then what we do here is we partner with SAP to drive an endpoint workflow to say that, hey, every time somebody checks in, checks out, an employee or a contractor, that's a record. We're going to capture that record in EH&S, and that will be ultimately actionable, recordable, right, from an event standpoint. And then hopefully there are no recordable events that happen from that. But if there are, you've at least got the log history to really demonstrate this individual checked in at this time and this was the situation. So happy to discuss more, but just wanted to kind of share some guidance in terms of where the industry is headed from an AWS perspective. Amit, back to you.
Thanks, Eric. I mean, that was really wonderful. I mean, I specifically picked up like a couple of points. I mean, I was amazed on how well AWS is integrated with SAP. I mean, you gave examples of anomaly detection and the computer vision, right? How you are identifying the event and then starting a process inside SAP, right? The EHS example was wonderful, right? And yeah, good. Well, both SAP and AWS are beautiful product, wonderful product. But how do you deliver the promise of this product? Venki, Bosch it has itself gone through a larger digital transformation journey, and I know Bosch also provides digital transformation services to customers. So how do you kind of realize the promise of SAP and AWS, and how do you help the customers in building a digital backbone for enabling the business transformation? Over to you, Venki.
Thanks, Amit. And Bosch's position is unique in that way, right? Because we have been a practitioner in the sense that we eat our own dog food. So we understand how it has been realized within us, and then we are able to confidently take it to the outside world as well. Again, thanks Mark and Eric for setting a wonderful stage, because most of what I'm going to discuss is going to be a reflection of what you spoke at an abstract level, and how the technology is emerging, right? So thanks for the roundup. Next slide, please. So, as Mark rightly pointed out, the mega trends was impacting manufacturing businesses all across the world, and Bosch was not an exception. Bosch, being a manufacturing setup with over 280 plants spread across 60 countries, it was at the center of this digital transformation, and we as enterprise architects and consulting partners had to deliver a IT or a technology landscape that supported future proofing of our business. So at the hindsight, if we look at what were those key pillars that helped us do the future proofing of our digital backbone, four top things come to our mind, right? One is a high performance digital core, which for us in Bosch is SAP. That is the high performance digital core. The second is uh, we have 280 plants, and each of these plants have multiple assets, machineries, and devices which are spewing data every microsecond. And these data is becoming important for us to integrate and make sense. The third one being the systems becoming very complex. We had to find a way to manage it effectively. So many of newer architecture principles like modularity, or serverless architecture, etc., is bringing a lot of scale and flexibility into our environment. And finally, along with democratization of the data, we are also looking at democratization of intelligence, giving the intelligence at the hands of every users and the entire organization, so that we can reap the benefit of it, right? So these become the four pillars of our technology architecture to future proof our business. And of course, building resilience or security to all of our applications is at the core of everything that we design. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, going a little deeper into the digital core element, which again has resonance with what Mark had spoken about constructing businesses that are constructing the architecture relevant to our businesses. As most of you would know, Bosch is into four different business units, from industrial technology to mobility to house of consumer goods and so on. So SAP provided us the platform to structure our core into an horizontal system that were commercial functions, and also the vertical systems which were more of business functions. So this was a flexibility that was very important to us. And through the sessions, whether it is Eric's session or Mark, we spoke about how the shop floor to top floor integration is very important. So a notification which is arising from a anomaly that is detected in an asset should end up creating a plant maintenance order in SAP. And the plant maintenance order, taking into account that the machine is going to be down for some time, should reflect in the MRP planning and scheduling for that day. So that is the sort of integrated world that we live in the IoT environment, where the seamless exchange of data between different layers become very important. And it is not only a vertical integration, but we are also talking about horizontal integration, in the sense that if there is a change in the customer demand, or the customer asks for a newer order or reduces his order, and we have to be responsive and adaptive enough to change our planning and inventory positions to respond to that demand. So here, when you closely look at the digital core, becomes that system which integrates all of this data from its ecosystem, intelligently processes it, and gives an output for an highly optimized operations. So that is the importance of having a digital code that is integrated to its ecosystem, that is adaptive to the changes in business, and is also capable of responding. Of course, having a very clean and modern core in terms of good master data, standardized processes are very important, along with having an API mesh architecture that enables a seamless integration. Can we move to the next slide, please? The third aspect is, again, we spoke a lot about data democratization. Um, Robert Bosch Enterprise Data Lake is our way of democratizing the data. I'll give a quick example of we having built a supply chain control tower on top of this data lake, which broke the organization silos of sourcing, procurement, inventory or warehouse management, production planning, and also customer order management. Before Red Lake, all of these were siloed functions and the data exchange was not happening, and everybody had to orchestrate the customer order delivery through phone calls or manually. The data lake really helped us democratize and make the data available to all of these functions to do a cross department collaboration with the main purpose of serving the customer well, right? So for us, data lake is that type of a strategic enabler which helps the organization improve its customer experience or improve the quality of products that we are delivering. And this data lake is used not only for descriptive analytics but also to do statistical modeling around predictive and prescriptive analysis. And this is also becoming a base for us to build our digital agents in the generative AI era. Can we move to the next one, please? As I had mentioned, not just the data democratization, as an organization, we are also looking at democratizing the intelligence, right? And we want intelligence to be at every touch point of business processes, whether it is a shop floor. A great example given by Eric about using image analytics to find out anomalies on the shop floor, or in the commercial function using anomaly detection to find out if there is a duplicate payment happening, or we are giving credit to a customer who is unlikely to pay. Yeah, and then at the topmost level to help the management analyze the strategic risk and do the strategic planning, right? So the pervasiveness of our intelligence should be across all levels of usage, and also from different levels of cognitive solutions, right? Whether it is a pure play automation, or having a machine learning based intervention, or having digital agents through generative AI. So infusing intelligent interventions across the board is another key pillar for our success. So with that, I come to my final slide, which is about building resilience. So we can build beautiful systems, beautiful architecture, but if we don't protect it against vulnerabilities, then it is as no good. And I'm sure that the recent memory serves as well on how the entire transportation and airlines could be brought to a halt without a proper security, right? So that is the core of what we need to take care of. And also the changing geopolitical situation also gives the flexibility for us to look at how do we organize our systems, whether it is to loosely couple the system in case where we want some amount of interactions with the local systems, or fully decoupled where we leave the systems decoupled. So looking at it comprehensively, both from geopolitical angle and also securing
Oh, Venki, we lost you.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sure,
Are
good.
you able to hear me? Yeah, yeah. So these are some of the building blocks of our technology landscape that helps us in being future proof. And with that, I hand it over to Amit back, please.
Hey, Venki, thank you very much. I mean, real great example of, I mean, when Eric talked about the vertical integration, right, and Mark talked about talked about the cloud, the integration, and Eric talking about the cloud part, right? I saw that that has been built in Bosch, and I really like this whole idea of how you are democratizing data and democratizing intelligence using the data lake. So very good examples. I think the promise of the product has already been in action in Bosch, and we are seeing the results. Well, good. With this, we come to the most anticipated part of our Bosch conversation is the panel discussion. Okay, and very happy to all have you all of here. So yes, I'll be the host for the panel. Eric, Mark, Michael, and Venki. Welcome again for the panel. Well, um, let's move to the next slide. Well, Mark, what are some of the key examples you see on how manufacturers are enhancing their existing SAP usage and cloud workload data to create value in engineering, supply chain, and manufacturing?
Yeah, I think, first, kudos to Bosch for Venki, what you guys just presented. That's kind of like the epitome of what a lot of people want to go to. It's amazing going from shop floor to top floor like you've done. But there's other examples out there of companies that have done similar things. It can range from very small to very large. And a small example is Smart Press Shop in Germany went to SAP Cloud. And by doing that, it allowed them to unlock data and really get at some of the AI offerings that we have that are embedded in SAP around visual inspection so that they could take advantage of this. And some of the benefits that they got were they reduced the inspection cost by 25% by using automated visual inspection. And the second thing is the defect detection rates went up by 90% compared to humans. So completely automating the process through AI produced some benefits. If you look at a company like Hitachi, they also went to cloud, large conglomerate, very similar to Bosch. They wanted a clean core, similar to what you guys did. And by using that BTP platform that I talked about earlier, they really were able to reduce the modifications that they had in the system by 94%, and they spent 90% less time upgrading, which gives them that agility and flexibility they need to take advantage of all the data that's being generated.
No, that's a very good example. In fact, I think this is a whole trend of keeping the core clean and how BTP is coming to make sure the core is clean and it is highly maintainable, right? Good. Um, Eric, cloud, very important part. How cloud data lake is helping the customers on building their digital backbone for business transformation.
Yeah, this is as I mentioned earlier. This is the recurring theme. I've been lucky to have gone to a number of customer events and meetings as of late, and I think the single most recurring issue is what is the guidance around the converged data strategy, right? And I think as we think about establishing the digital core, I think we should be very specific. It's around the data governance, right? How do we collect, connect, contextualize these data sets, right? And to have those OT data sets live alongside those IT data sets that are generally coming out of business systems like an SAP, and then bringing those together and having that additional sort of contextualization layer so that we can actually drive towards real-time cost and profitability analysis, right? Across an asset, across a business, across the enterprise. I think that's the dream. And so to do that, you need to have that enterprise data model in mind, right? Because if that's your desired output is to be able to manage your business more intelligently, even autonomously and predictively, then it comes all the way back around to the data so that once that data strategy has been instantiated, then we now have the ability to scale, right? Scale up and then scale out across the enterprise
Mhm.
and then deploy highly advanced services, right? Until you do that, nothing is possible. I think that's what most people are starting to recognize is that number one, that is, we need to look at data differently, right? Not as a as overhead, not as a necessary evil, but as an asset, right? An asset that has to be managed and maintained over time.
No, no, very well said, Eric. I think you have been emphasizing a lot on the data part and how do you use the data, right? So when we are talking about data, we we can't stay away from AI and Gen AI, right? So while we are all focusing on building a stronger digital backbone, right? How are how is Gen AI coming in? And this question is to Michael and Venki. Uh, what what are the trends you are seeing, and what are the use cases you are seeing?
Amit, I
So,
think
Michael.
when it comes to AI, a lot of the companies are only starting to scratch the surface, and they're implementing basic use cases like bots to provide some status information on the orders or commit dates and invoicing info and so on. By and large, though, the manufacturing process remains unaffected. And what we're seeing with a lot of the geopolitical impacts and microeconomic impacts that Venki was talking about earlier is that there is a need for this much more resilient, right, much faster adaptation to making changes to the source of supply, right, to go to alternative sources of supply or creating alternative products, shifting to different markets, right, when we see these events. And this is where AI can be leveraged to much greater level and provide ability to streamline the manufacturing outcome. We've seen various attempts in the past to create different tools for demand signaling, right, to affect the manufacturing output. But AI can take it really to the next level. Also, AI can be leveraged for the new product creation, right? Because AI can look at the data from the consumer sentiment, from competitive analysis standpoint, right? Market trends, assess that data and help and generate new products and make them more viable for the markets. And there are lots of different use cases. I love the use case that Eric was talking about. In fact, about 4 years ago, I worked on a very similar use case for one of the companies, not only being able to assess that people are wearing the gloves and goggles, but also harnesses and being even attached to a safety line when wearing a harness. All that is fantastic, but there are good use cases on QA, on fraud detection, on counterfeit part detection. There are great use cases that can be uh, brought to consumers and to customers on connected factories for sure. So,
Yeah.
as you know, we've been working together with Bosch on some of these use cases as well. Things like collaborative filtering and content-based filtering, and we're experimenting how to bring that technology to manufacturing customers.
Yep. Yep. Thanks, Michael. Venki, any perspective on that? You are driving Gen AI. Venki, are you on mute by any chance?
Yes, sorry. So, as Mike rightly pointed out, the potential for AI in industrial manufacturing is very high. And the angle of Gen AI, right, I think is in a positive direction, and it can give a flip to the industrial AI itself, right? So we have been using Gen AI to create synthetic data which can help in computer vision analytics, right? So which can cut short the entire process of data annotation and having to take the number of pictures before you can train the model on image analytics for end of line inspection. That's one great application of Gen AI, which can give a fillip to the adoption of AI itself. The second one is a lot of data, whether it is near miss accident data or maintenance error records, which traditionally have not been digitized in any form level. They are lying as PDF documents or handwritten documents and all that. And
Mhm.
NLP itself had a little bit of constraint in processing this data. But what we are now
Mhm.
seeing is with large language models, the historically non-digitized data is also becoming available as a source
Mhm.
for jump starting the industrial AI journey, right? So that way, I
Mhm.
don't see Gen AI as a progression of AI, but
Mhm.
something that can be parallelly used for an extended adoption of AI as well. So yes, a lot of potential there from text to image to video analytics to create efficient, safe, and a sustainable workplace.
Yeah, yeah, but I know that many use cases are being implemented across business division, and they are really saving a lot of money. And I know that there's a lot of
And
cost
even time to
efficiency in.
market, Amit.
Yes,
So
trying to time to
Gen AI
market.
is really reducing the time to market for adoption of AI on the industrial shop
Mm,
floors.
yeah. And one of the key thing is that now with this new generation, right, who like to use Chat GPT and other Gen AI tools, right? You are really attracting them on plant job, which normally sometimes the new gen guys don't like it. Well,
Correct.
before I go to my next question, I've got an audience question, and this is specifically for SAP. Mark, the question is that. How is the move to S4 and then this rise with SAP is helping in adoption of new technologies?
I think the first thing that it does is just simply moving to the cloud makes it easier to adopt a lot of these technologies. Again, with the acknowledgement that um, SAP and these complex industrial companies isn't the only system of record out there, right? As you go up and down that stack, there are a lot of other applications generating a lot of other data, right? And a lot of them are in the cloud, and all being in the cloud and all being able to be open and share that data with each other becomes critically important. I think when you talk to a lot of our customers, I mean, we hear a lot, look, ECC isn't broken. It works great for industrial manufacturers. Why do we need to move? And the more you talk to them, the more they realize that A, the business has changed drastically for them from when they first configured the system. Two, they've tended to add a lot onto the system and customize it. So we talked earlier on, the world's changing, technology's changing, right? The business is
Mhm.
demanding things faster. They're backed into a corner in these old systems that can't react as quickly, right? Going to the cloud, keeping that floor clean, using BTP, using services like Amazon provides. I mean, you guys are a great showcase for what's possible if you modernize, right? There's just so much more you can do versus being sort of stuck in that rigid platform that just can't move as fast as the business wants to move.
Okay, good, good. So building on that, I have one more question coming from the audience, and this is to both of you actually, Eric and Mark. What are the areas SAP and AWS are going to invest in future?
There's actually quite a bit going on. And I think we are looking, as I mentioned earlier, from the edge to business, those end-to-end use cases. I touched on two in manufacturing. We're now looking at supply chain. It's no secret. Amazon is known for supply chain. We're literally the 1 to 2 day sort of delivery guarantee organization. And so we're looking at how do we reimagine that whole supply chain experience in terms of just what's being planned to ultimately what's being delivered. Also, on the other front, you've probably seen some announcements in like in the automotive industry with Hyundai. Now you can configure, price, and quote a vehicle delivered with a VIN with Hyundai, right? And so you're going to start to see many manufacturers really reimagine their customer value chain, right? Like what does it mean? What are the different customer experiences? Everything from configure, price, quote to servicing that vehicle, that machine, right? And how can that experience be reimagined through bringing SAP capabilities and AWS capabilities together? So excited to share those with you as we're ready to announce them. But what I can
Mhm.
say is that there is definitely a lot going on. Mark?
Yeah, I would say the two biggest for us are obviously AI. And I think we've all alluded to it. There's so many different places that you can apply AI, but if you think that SAP, where we're really focused is embedding SAP through these end-to-end business processes. There's massive opportunities in a lot of different areas to just up productivity for people, or something as simple as, you don't often hear people say SAP's the easiest product to use, right? We've always heard the comments on the user interface, something like Joule, which is, think of a sort of conversational chat GPT that is really the way that you're now interacting with the system, either by prompts or verbally, changes the whole interaction with the system. So a ton being done on the AI front. And then second, on the sustainability front, a lot of the development there, again, all cloud requires that end-to-end viewpoint and data and end-to-end processes. There's a lot going into that.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Um, well, let me just slightly move, right? We talked about a lot about SAP usage and workloads, right? But right, manufacturers are running multiple systems, complex systems across geographies, across technologies, right? So the question is to Michael and Venki, because you guys are driving those implementation on the field, right? So I mean, the as we think about the digital backbone of data, what are some of the key system, cloud, and data integrations to consider that could deliver digital transformation ROI? So specifically, this question is on around ROI.
Um, So it's an interesting question, and you rightly pointed out that manufacturing customers are really running very complicated environments, and even the smaller customers have B2B and B2C scenarios for e-commerce. They've got the manufacturing execution system running. They got robotics, automation, inventory management. Your head will spin when you actually look underneath and see the landscapes. But all this is running on this multi-cloud or sometimes even on-prem environments and generating vast amount of data. So what happens is that data is the foundation for pretty much anything. All the great things that we talked about, like AI and automation and things like that. But this data, right, is very often is without the business context, right? And when we especially going through some of the M&A type of events, we're ingesting a lot of the data, and then if we don't use it in the right way, it leads to pretty bad business outcomes, right, and poor decision making. So from my standpoint, the real ROI is in finding a way to harness the data and really weaponize the data for many different things, including AI and new product development, design, and things like that. So I really believe that when it comes to data, what needs to be done is we need to address it from a standpoint of making sure that the data is cleansed in a proper way, right? We have good data governance and data stewardship processes in place, right, to use it to our advantage. And what we see with a lot of our customers is that this conversation around the data stewardship and data management comes up pretty much every time they're approaching the digital transformation. Thank you.
Venki, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Amit. And for me, I think for optimized digital ROI, we should look at scale and simplicity, right? Um, for from a simplicity standpoint, during the experimentation phase of digital transformation, a lot of redundant applications are created, a lot of redundant technology choices are made, which kind of increases the overall total cost of ownership. At some point in time, we have to rationalize this, simplify this, and bring it under one common suite. Suite or a platform which provides all of these services, right? So simplification and rationalization is very important. And the other aspect or the vector for good ROI is the scale, right? So as much as of your plant users or your locations adopt to a common technology choice that you have made centrally, it helps in realizing faster ROI. So scale and simplicity is I think the key mantra for um, realizing a good digital ROI. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. Yeah.
No, no, thank you very much. I mean, scale and yes, yeah. I have one very interesting question coming from an audience, right? So, well, you talked about democratization of data intelligence, right? And those are like a true north of transformation, right? But this whole aspect of cultural resistance, right? Organization change management. So, how can organizations overcome the cultural resistance that comes through this whole transformation? Any of you, Michael, Svenky, any of you?
Okay,
I
perfect.
think, if I can jump in here, I think we're always a little bit concerned about the unknown, right? So we kind of we hear things, but we don't necessarily know the real reason why people are maybe concerned about technology or maybe not sure how to start and where to start. So I think it's good old fashioned taking the bull by the horn and trying to um, make something great out of it. I mean, think about this. All this great technology available to us, right? You're looking at offerings like SAP, Rise with SAP, right? So you got your platform, you got your cloud ERP, you got your BTP, you got your all the great services there, right? And you can leverage it to your advantage, right? You also heard Eric talking about. Things like eventing, right? How can we use events and leverage that for our businesses, right? For manufacturing. I mean, just things that you can stitch together by leveraging events is pretty incredible. Think about an example where, let's say, you have a lot of orders in November, but some of your large orders shifted to December. So now you have that extra capacity in November. However, you plan to maybe do some machine maintenance in December, and now you're sort of in a conflict, right? What do? So by leveraging this eventing capability, you can signal that you have now capacity in November open. Can I shift my maintenance over to November? That way you can keep your assets operational and you can keep your commitments whole, right? And at the same time, now that you have extra capacity for transportation in November, how can I maybe shift some of my packaging, some of my container, and utilize them in the best way? So then, we can take advantage of that. So if you think about it, right? So all this technology, all this capability that you can stitch together in a different way than you used to, generates incredible opportunity, right, for manufacturing customers. Why not use it?
Mhm. Why not use it? Very good. Take the bull by the horn. I liked it. Okay. One more interesting question from the audience. Okay, and I think I'll push it to Mark. The question is, how can organization balance the long-term transformation and short-term result orientation in the journey? It's a kind of balancing the short-term versus long-term. And I'm sure these questions are asked when you're advising your customers.
Yeah, and it's actually a little bit of a tricky question because the projects that have been the most successful, um,
Hmm.
this might be blasphemy to say it, but they haven't been IT projects. It's really been driven from the business. People have looked at the business cohesively first and figured out, what are we today? Where do we need to be end to end, right? What's really needed from a business perspective? And business has to be involved in this discussion, and you've got to align to, where are they trying to go? Where is the value? Then what processes do we need to support this? And the last thing then is, okay, we've got this great opportunity with technology, whether it's SAP, Amazon, all the other things out there. What needs to be built now to support this goal, this vision, right? And that's kind of the big picture, the blueprint of the house, so to speak, just like Bosch had their blueprint that Venki showed.
Hmm.
Now, sometimes that takes years to get there, right? So there's a series of, how do we actually build this in a feasible way, in a way that the business can digest it, we financially can digest it, and do it to show quick wins and quick returns, right? If you stay within the
Hmm.
blueprint of the house and follow the architecture, but still look for projects that enable quick wins and quick value, that ends up a win-win to the business, because no one wants to sit around for years waiting for something to start paying off. It becomes very hard to get at that capital.
Yeah, and just a quick add on there, Amit, to what Mark just laid out. Where we seek success is exactly that. IT projects are generally looked at as science experiments, and it's really key to attach yourself to business-led outcomes, right? And something as massive as and large and complex as an SAP transformation, it is best when you
Hmm.
break it down in logical sort of phases that can be deployed. And where we've seen success is where you're able to position more of a self-funded strategy. So if your a
Hmm.
number one priority is around customer experience, well, let's deliver a better customer sat score as part of that transformation. If it's supply chain, then let's have a better days in inventory or on time in full sort of outcome. If it's manufacturing, maybe it is better mean time between failure or OEE. Get super specific around the business and the outcomes, and then the technology will enable those outcomes. But do not lead with the technology first, right? That's basically generally accepted sort of best practices at this point.
Yeah, not really, really interesting. I think we have got a mix of audience here. So there's another question, which is how can small and mid-sized companies compete with larger enterprises in terms of building a scalable digital backbone? I think like yeah, there are mid-sized companies who are growing at a breakneck speed, right? While we talked about a complex organization across geographies, I think sooner or later these guys are also going to are going to face those kind of challenges. So what would be your advice,
Well,
Mark?
I think we see this a lot. I mean, not only are they stretched capital wise, they're stretched resource wise, right? There's just not a lot of people to do these sort of projects. So SAP's really looked at this carefully. We've got a lot of customers in this space that are what we would call mid-sized enterprises. Us and our partners try to often what we'll call pre-configure a solution specific to the industry so that it can be deployed very quickly. As long as the customer says, you know, I'm not that drastically different from what you've seen 50 years in this industry that others do, they can take it as is, adopt it very quickly. It cuts the service costs down to deploying it and the time to deploy it and gets back to that quick time to value. And then it's a matter, like we said before, of those quick projects coming on after as the business can absorb them. I think AI also in the right areas, especially the embedded AI that's coming with SAP, can also lead to productivity and cost reductions for some of these mid-sized companies. And like Eric said, help self-fund some of these projects.
Yep, no, very good. Any other thoughts from anyone? I got one more interesting question, which is around getting the approval for the business case for transformation. So, right, plants and factories are right now facing margin pressures, and there's a huge amount of competition, right? So, how do you get approvals for system and on project funding to tackle SAP and cloud transformation? I mean, these are SAP and doesn't come easy, right? So sorry, what? Yeah, any thoughts? How do you take the approval on the business case? Yeah.
Do you want me to take it or do you want someone else to take it?
I think okay. Let me ask Venki. And
Yeah. Thanks, Amit. Yeah. No, it's uh, see the main thing the board or any leadership looks for is the ownership and the commitment for the funds that you are securing for doing a digital project, right? And hence the collaboration with business is very important. So if I'm going to go and ask for an efficiency improvement project that is going to reduce X number of hours, that should reflect in my bottom line. Unless the business owner takes a reduced budget for his overall expenditure, which the digital project would get to, why would a board approve? Why would a board approve the cost, right? So the result ownership should come, right? The plant head should own up that is going to improve the operational efficiency by 2%, which means the production numbers are going to go up. So that type of accountability is very important, and this accountability comes from the joint ownership of IT leadership as well as the business leadership, and only then the projects or the budgets do get approved, right? So that's what I think is important to do. Another angle to look at is to present to the board what is the opportunity cost of not doing this at this point in time, because not everything may be black and white, resulting in return of investment, right? But some of the things have to be done now so that we don't lose out to the competition or what the competition is doing, right? So what is the opportunity cost lost of not doing this at this point in time? Will it will it put our business back by 2 years or so? These are the strong arguments that I think one needs to present to the board to get seek their blessings and the sponsorship for the projects.
No, this is very good actually. Short term versus long term opportunity cost. And I think the CXOs are realizing that this technology is a key thing to provide them an edge, right? So yes, but there's always this whole debate about the ROI and the approval for the business case, right? Michael, I'm sure you have done multiple transformation while you were in SAP and when you're outside SAP with JDC, right? I'm sure these questions would have been encountered. How any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's really a balancing act between a few things, right? On one hand, right, you have an appetite, right? So you want to transform because you want to do new business, you want to maybe venture into some kind of new processes that you couldn't do before. So it's a bit of an innovation driven, but also there's the need, right? So it costs a lot to maintain and so on. But your appetite is to transform. You want automation, you want AI, you want all the smart, great things, right? Intelligence built into that, but it costs money, right? But then you also have the reality that you have all the processes, right? All the tasks, dependencies that always occur during the transformation projects, and very often it's the complexity of that is underestimated. And finally, budgets, right? So we always hear from the management is that, oh, the budgets are tight this year and we really have to do more with less. So we constrain ourselves right away, so that way we start to look for ways to cut corners, right, and maybe do less than what was really intended. But bottom line is, like Venki said, right? You need to underpin value to anything you are proposing to your board, right, to your management to do. It boils down to two simple things. It's either find a way to make money, and by that I mean new models, new products, new business ventures, and things like that that you could not support, or save money. So you're looking at operational efficiencies, right? Some productivity gains that you also could not achieve with your old environment. So if you can find a way to pin that value to any proposal that you make to a management, it would be hard to find a reason not to do it if the value is great.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
that's
good.
what we always like to do when we have conversations with our customers. Find a way to pin the value to it, and if you can prove that, then the conversation becomes a lot simpler.
Yeah. No, that's good actually. I mean, and once you have demonstrated value in terms of numbers or something, right? Then definitely the CXOs are willing to look at it, right? Uh, Mark, I'm sure you would be also encountering any different thoughts, any uh, any wisdom that you can share with our audience.
Only two things to add. One is that I see a lot of times companies will look at the value, but they're still sort of caught in measuring it against the way they did things before. That's why I said really looking at the business end to end of what the to be is going to be and what the processes are. Looking at that more cohesive big picture is important to get the total picture of the value. The second is that um, we used to have, we still do, but we have a value engineering group that is people that do this all the time for customers to help build the value case. But SAP also has a tool now called Signavio that really looks at what is happening in the system, how processes are being used, and starts to be able to point out inefficiencies the way that you're actually using the system. And it can start applying financial metrics against that. So this is a real quick way to kind of let the intelligence run against how your processes are working and say, hey, you've got opportunities for improvement in these particular places, and they equate to this amount of dollars. So it's just another sort of tool to help you on that journey.
Oh, yep, good. Uh, Eric, any thought, anything different? Any words of wisdom for my
Yeah,
audience?
yeah, just one takeaway, and I think we've all hit on it. I'll just be super direct around this in terms of just the winning strategy. How do you position an SAP transformation to win? I think, being able to articulate the strategy in terms of how it's going to help you, number one, grow top line, right? And for some companies, it's definitely the machine builders are looking at this thing called recurring revenue. Why? Because the recurring
Mm-hmm.
revenue, the street valuates that much, much more, right? In terms of
Mm-hmm.
just, you right, the value of your organization and the business. Number two, how do we drive and grow profitability? How do we drive and make current processes more efficient and or
Mm-hmm.
better, right? And then the
Mm-hmm.
last one is how do we influence and drive the green line? That's the newest one. The green line is about sustainability. It is around product carbon footprint. It is about CSRD reporting. It is about, right, all the macros, because then ultimately financial risk is tied to the green line. Your cost of capital is tied to the green line. So all of the macros
Mm-hmm.
really kind of just are really kind of spin off as part of that. So I think, again, it's top line, it's profitability, and it's the green line.
Yeah, I really like your direct answer. I mean, really, you're talking about the points that matters the CXOs very much, and what street values, right? Right, the green line, the top line, the bottom line, yeah, and these things, if you are able to nail it down, yes, good. I think we answered a lot of audience questions. I'm just scrolling if I am left with something else. Oh, okay. I think we covered almost all the questions. Yes. Uh, well, we come towards the end of the panel discussion, but before I let you guys go, I think I've got a few. Any final thoughts? I'm going to start with Venki, Michael, Eric, and Mark. For the audience, if they are embarking on digital transformation, one line, what do you want them to heed to? Venki, you're, I guess, on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Amit. I think it's a digital first world. And we spoke about data democratization, we spoke about democratization of intelligence, and I think we are headed to a world where the democratization of development with low code, no code platforms should also
Mhm.
go towards users, and the CIOs playing more of a governance role and not coming in between the digitization processes, right? So I think digital is here to stay, and more and more democratization from data to development to deployment, I think should become user centric, and the CIO organization becoming more of a governance and a provider organization, right? So
Yeah,
that's my
yeah, yeah.
final thought on how this could end.
Good, good. Empowering the users. Michael,
Users, right? It should become more
any word
user
of
centric.
wisdom?
Yeah, when it comes to digital transformation, I like to use allegories in conversations. So I think of digital transformation as a tidal wave. So if you plan things right, you can rise with it, right, and you can benefit from it. But if you don't, right, you get swept away by it. So my
Hmm.
approach is do this planning early, right? Really think through this and put things in
Hmm.
perspective. What you want to achieve, what kind of value you want to generate out of it, and then plan it in such a way that it's not just lift and shift of the old technology and old ways of doing business onto a new platform. Really transform with it. That's why it's called digital transformation, right? Really change your
Yeah.
ways, improve that, right? Think of your to be, right, your final state, and then rise with it.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Rise with the wave. Yeah. Eric.
I think it's important to start, right? And I think you can have controlled starts in between SAP, Michael, JDC, and Bosch. There are a lot of accelerators and best practices, right? I think most organizations are really trying to get their heads wrapped around what something like a generative AI project does entail. What does it entail for manufacturing? We have use cases and accelerators, right? Probably for anything that you can imagine. I would encourage you to connect with any one of us to just start having the conversation, because what this will help you do is avoid any mistakes that other customers have made in the past, learn from, the leaders here on the call today, and then ultimately accelerate your journey. And just by coincidence, my public service announcement, we've got our global reInvent conference taking place coming up here in December. I believe all of us will be there in some fashion. It's a great opportunity to connect. And I know SAP is actually first year sponsor. And so looking forward to Mark, you and your team's participation there.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, that's going to be the mega event, and I think that's where it's a good platform to connect. Yes. Um, Mark, any final words of
Yeah,
wisdom?
I would just say that this stuff's not easy, right? This is like the heart of your company, and no one wants to go through a heart transplant, but that's sort of what it is, right? You could do things death by a thousand lashes and a bunch of little band-aids, but to do it right, like Venki was showing with how Bosch has done it, it really takes a master plan. And I totally agree with Michael that you've got all this great new capability and technology out there to simply take it and try to replicate what you've done 20 years ago when you first did it is a missed opportunity. I really would look things like Michael said, look at it fresh, take advantage of the power that's out there now.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Thank you very much. With this, I come to the end of the conversation. Really lovely having all of you on the panel, and I'm really sure that the audience got benefited about it. Thank you, Venki, Michael, Eric, Mark, for spending time with us and sharing your thoughts and ideas and words of wisdom on how our audience can go for digital transformation and build a digital backbone, right? Audience, thank you very much for your participation. Um, our LinkedIn, you can see the LinkedIn code. Please scan it and reach out to any of us with your questions. There'll be a survey once the session is over. You will also get a survey at the end through email. So feel free to give your feedback, and I would love to have conversation with you. With this, thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, audience, and look forward to the next chapter of Bosch Conversation. Bam.
Thank you.
Thank you.